Let's talk about the architecture in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. How does the incredible environment of Hyrule influence your strategy? Can you guess which classical architectural technique played a pivotal role in your experience? And most importantly, is it possible that A Link to the Past changed the way that you see the world? Now, this is not a strategy or a walkthrough or a history, but a discussion about what architectural thinking can tell us about video games and vice versa. Hi, I'm Scav. This is Mr. Smee. It's his 4th birthday, and we want to welcome you to the Extra Office, a channel where we talk about architecture and video games. And today, we're doing a breakdown of Zelda: Link to the Past. Released in 1991-92 for Super Nintendo to widespread critical and commercial success. This was the 3rd game in the Zelda series, but to me, it's the most important foundational game of the series. The genre is called action-adventure, but it was really an early RPG video game / open-world game. When we play video games, we project our sense of self into the character. In this case, we're projecting ourselves as Link, and we are tasked with saving Zelda and others from captivity by the evil Ganon, and, of course, saving all of Hyrule. So what's interesting is the only customization of this character is that we get to choose our name, which made me think of this amazing story about the Dread Pirate Roberts in The Princess Bride. There's an infamous pirate who's ruled the 7 seas for 20 years, but we find out that this character, Wesley, actually became Dread Pirate Roberts for a time, and that Dread Pirate Roberts isn't one pirate, but a name that has been passed from pirate to pirate.
Then he explained that the name was the important thing for inspiring the necessary fear. You see, no one would surrender to the Dread Pirate Wesley.
The character Wesley says no one's afraid of Dread Pirate Wesley, they're only afraid of the name. That to me kind of clues us in to how we can attach a meaning to another character if we kind of know that there's a trick involved. By naming Link our name, we are kind of in on the trick that this is a game that a lot of other people are playing, but we're playing it in our own unique way. So I think of all the games that we've looked at in history, this starts to get the closest to a sort of more personal self-construction. So Link moves in plan, but our view isn't actually perfectly from the top. We are at what's called a plan oblique from the south, which means we're actually at a tilted, perfect perpendicular view, or we're actually at a tilted view of the world, but it is still axisymmetric. The thing about plan oblique, which is funny, is that you can see all the front of the buildings and the roof, but you can't see the back. So we don't really know what the back looks like, but the game does know this and tricks us once at least in Kakariko Village with the bar. You can enter and you find out that there's actually a back door that you can go in. But when we are inside buildings and inside dungeons, our view changes to a forced one-point perspective. It's not used in architecture. However, that view allows us to see the entire floor and all walls of the room, which help us identify paths forward and different doors from top and bottom. It's a really unique kind of angle. The game actually rewards your understanding of architecture because from the outside you can see that this specific building has a small space to the side, but when you go in you can't see that space or that other room, but you can actually break down that wall and enter it, and the game rewards you for that. In order to change our access, Link gains access to new powers and abilities and then uses them on the environment, which this restriction of access kind of tricks us into a linear storyline seeming like a kind of open world, but it is linear. But access is a very interesting concept to explore in this game because as architects work, when you draw like a staircase or a door, you inherently know that there are certain people who can't go up that staircase in the same way that other people can. And that kind of give and take is a big part of what architecture as a discipline talks about. But we generally have good information in the heads-up display as a player that's always available to us. But we need information about our environment so much that we have already built in this wonderful map of Hyrule, but when we are in a dungeon, the map to the dungeon is worth risking our life over. It's crucial that we find the map. The fact that they're called maps is kind of interesting because we can culturally read that calling them a floor floor plan would be a little bit too much sort of hidden knowledge, so we call the floor plan a map so that more people have access to the game and understand the game. So let's talk about the mood of the environment that our character is placed in, and how the mood of that environment, or the structuring of that environment, ends up influencing us. Hyrule is a strong piece of world building because it has so many varied environments, from deserts to mountains to thick forests and swamps and characters and history. We can interact with this environment more than any other game that came before it, it seems. We chop plants, we make holes in walls, and even raise and lower the water levels, making the environment feel much more directly influenced by the player, therefore made meaningful, a theme which will certainly resonate in future games. So the mood of environment even conveys a sort of change in our purpose. When we're in the light world, we're generally focused on saving Zelda, but when we get to the dark world, we realize that all of Hyrule needs our help. There are, citizens that have been trapped down there, and it is our duty to sort of help them. And of course, I have to mention the incredibly compelling soundtrack, which keys you into these environments as you go and makes places throughout the game even more meaningful. Like the sound when you enter a fairy cave is just so welcoming. You know that you're safe, and you know that you're protected, and you know that you're going to be healed. So we advance through the game by augmenting our environment, by talking with and interacting with and helping the citizens. And that interaction and that aid usually involves somebody giving us their most prized possession, for example. And by helping them, we gain the ability to augment our environment a little more and a little more, and in so becoming more powerful and eventually, hopefully, saving Hyrule. So how does the architecture impact the way we strategize how we play? You've got a big fight ahead of you because of a time-tested architectural technique called the antechamber. An antechamber is a small room or vestibule which serves as a precursor, a spatial appetizer, if you will, to a larger room of some significance. My favorite has to be the antechamber to Trinex in Turtle Rock. In fact, I think Turtle Rock's my favorite dungeon. But think of this space, like you're floating on a disc with no ground, passing rows of columns which flow up from the darkness with only a landing in front of you. Ooh. Very impressive and impactful. Just the architecture itself is enough to tell you that what you're about to do is a big deal. Another thing I love about the dungeons is the moment we can enter a room that has a big treasure chest, but we can't access it. Almost every dungeon has this little peek at the big treasure chest. And these cheeky moments are great ways I can relate dungeons to ideas about architecture, mostly modernist master architect Le Corbusier. See, Le Corbusier, the figurehead of modernism, felt that vision was of utmost importance in how we organize space. Windows aren't just for light, but they're frames for how you see the world, and what you see matters. Now, seeing that chest certainly informed how I moved through the rest of the dungeon and the decisions I made. And there's a quote from Corbusier that says, "The purpose of construction is to make things hold together, of architecture to move us," which is why these visions of the outside from the inside are so important. Things like light wells tend to attract our attention because we know we can go outside from them. Or like this other part of Turtle Rock Dungeon where we have a peek outside. Corbusier also said, "The history of architecture is the history of the struggle for light." All these examples are architecture influencing our greater strategy, our greater spatial decisions, where we move, where we direct Link to go. The most prominent example also to me, like when Mario chops the bridge down to kill Bowser, is lighting the torches in the final battle with Ganon help you defeat the Grand Wizard by casting enough light to see him through a shadow spell. And in that way, your interaction is sort of saving you. Your ability to change light, to change the architecture, to change the space, gives you the advantage. So how could playing A Link to the Past change the way that you see the world? This game rewarded generosity in a way that I think is really impactful and profound, because you play as a very generous fella, and playing Zelda generally reminds us, I think, to be a good citizen and to help those in need, and not to underestimate what helping your neighbor can mean, not just for yourself, but for the greater good. This is, of course, forgiving Link for, like, chopping people's gardens down constantly and blowing up their structurally suspicious walls. Thanks for listening. Of course, please like, share, and subscribe to get more videos like this. Comment down below with what game you think I should do next. Come find me on Patreon to support the channel, and join a Discord chat to add your voice to this discussion.